Tamisha Iman first appeared on television in RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13. But what you might not know is that she was originally cast on Season 12. As it turns out, there was a small glitch in the Tamisha Iman network. She had stage 3 colon cancer, so she took the year off, got treatment, and came back to Drag Race Season 13 ready to slay. Which is an impressive feat, and we need to talk about it. Hey, I'm Dr. Jake, and I make videos about medicine and gay shit, and today, I want to talk about the gay shit that got removed from Tamisha Iman's colon. No, really. And later in the video, I will tell you how to avoid dying from colon cancer. Just a reminder, I'm a doctor, but I'm not your doctor, and this video is not medical advice. By the way, if you're not already subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you would click that subscribe button. It really helps my channel. Now back to poop. Tamisha Iman briefly told the story of her illness in What You Packin' after her elimination.
I went to my doctor and I was like, I can't get rid of this hemorrhoid or whatever the case may be. She did a quick examination. She was like, I don't think that's a hemorrhoid. You need to go and have colonoscopy. When I had the colonoscopy, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer.
Colorectal cancer is the second most common cause of cancer death in the world, just behind lung cancer. And the reason for that is that colorectal cancer is often detected too late. The longer it takes to detect cancer, the less likely that cancer is going to be amenable to treatment. In fact, at its early stages, colorectal cancer has a 90% 5-year survival rate. And what that means is that of all the people who have stage 1 colon cancer diagnosed, 90% of them will live for 5 years after their diagnosis. And the main reason for that is that if cancer is isolated to just one part of the body, in this case, the colon, you might only need surgery to remove that cancer, and you might not need other treatments at all. But in the later and more severe stages of colon cancer, you can't just knife out the cancer and be done. Treating stage 4 cancer, in which the cancer has spread throughout the Tamisha Iman network, almost always requires other, more dangerous treatments. And I'll come back to those treatments in just a bit. Because catching colon cancer early makes it more treatable, the American College of Gastroenterology recommends that all adults begin receiving screening colonoscopies at age 45 to check for colon cancer. And Tamisha is kind of the poster child for those guidelines. In fact, up until a couple of years ago, the recommendation was to start screening colonoscopies at age 50. During a screening colonoscopy, doctors remove polyps or bumps on the inside of the colon and they analyze them. Most of these polyps will just be regular old bumps that have no relationship to cancer, but data has shown that about 1 of every 250 people screened will in fact have colon cancer that is detected by this test, and they can thus receive treatment earlier than they would have had they not gotten that colonoscopy. But wait, there's more. Around 40% of all people who receive colonoscopies have polyps that are called adenomas. And by removing these adenomas, GI doctors prevent them from later transforming into cancer. And circling back to Tamisha was 48 when she was diagnosed. At that time, as I mentioned, the age for starting screening colonoscopies was 50. Tamisha was hit by exactly what colonoscopies are meant to prevent. And nerdy people, this seems like a great time to discuss colon cancer staging. Staging is a doctor's way of expressing how bad a cancer is by how much it has grown and spread throughout the body. I think of cancer like a viral TikTok dance. In stage 0, 1, and 2, the video is posted on TikTok, but staying pretty local. Like, it's a new account and the algorithm doesn't want to pick it up yet, but the cancer is growing. But next is stage 3, and now people outside of the viral dance community on TikTok are sharing it everywhere on TikTok, and it started to sort of leak out onto Twitter and Facebook. In cancer terms, what I'm saying is that the cancer has now spread to the lymph nodes, but it hasn't yet started to invade other organs. And then stage 4. The video is now completely viral. There's a good chance that your grandma, who can't even work her phone, let alone a computer, has seen this video 10 or 15 times because it's that good. And now she's calling every single one of her friends, and the video is spreading like wildfire. She just can't stop doing the monsoon munchie. In cancer terms, well, it's spread to other organs in your body. Maybe to the liver, maybe to the brain, maybe to the bones, maybe all of those places. And in stage 3 and 4, as I mentioned, cancer becomes a lot harder to treat. Now back to Tamisha, I mentioned that she had stage 3 colon cancer that was severe but had not yet traveled to distant parts of her body. She had to go through surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation to get through this disease, and all of those deserve some explanation. Surgery for colon cancer involves removing the biggest piece of cancer, usually its source. Sometimes all of a cancer, particularly in the early stages, can be removed with just surgery, but just in case they can't remove all of it, there are chemotherapy and radiation. Radiation is a reasonably intuitive treatment. Essentially, radioactive materials are used to zap away the cancer, and radiation can be used by itself or alongside surgery. And if it's used alongside surgery, it's called adjunct radiotherapy. And adjunct radiation therapy has two main purposes. First, it can shrink a big chunk of cancer or a tumor and make it easier to remove. Big piece of cancer, really hard to remove. Small piece of cancer, easier to remove, but could still be kind of hard. And second, it can be used to kill any leftover bits of cancer that remain after surgery. You see, cancer is messy. Little pieces break off, little cancer tentacles form. It doesn't just grow in a ball. And unfortunately, it's never exactly clear where the borders of cancer and regular person tissue lie unless you look at it under a microscope. And even then, surgeons are not perfect, and they're sometimes not able to remove all of a cancer. So that's one of the reasons that we use radiation after surgery sometimes. And we have one more treatment to talk about. Chemotherapy. I think that chemotherapy is probably the worst part of cancer treatment. But why is it so bad? To help you understand chemotherapy, I'm going to have to talk a little bit more in depth about what cancer is. I alluded a little bit ago to the fact that we often can't tell where cancer ends and the body begins. And that's because of how cancer starts. Cancer occurs when your body's cells reproduce out of control. But in reality, your body's cells are always reproducing, particularly the cells called epithelial cells. Those are the cells that line the parts of your body that are directly in touch with the outside. The skin is the most obvious example, but all of the inside of your digestive tract, including your mouth, stomach, small intestine, and as you may have guessed, the inside of your colon is made up of epithelial cells. And the most important part of the reproduction of the cells in your body is the replication of DNA. Every cell in your body has 46 chromosomes. Those chromosomes are all made out of DNA, and DNA is the blueprint for literally every component of your body. And when the cells in your body reproduce, they split those chromosomes made of DNA in half. And then your body recreates those missing halves using the split bits as a template. But the body isn't perfect, and sometimes it makes mistakes while creating new DNA. The body has a bunch of different mechanisms to fix those mistakes, a bunch of spell checkers, if you will, but sometimes those spell checkers fail. And those errors that escape the spell checker are called mutations. Now, usually, mutations aren't that big a deal. Otherwise, we'd all have 3 eyes. The chromosomes have a ton of parts that don't act as a blueprint for anything hugely important as far as we know, and mutations in those parts of the chromosomes are probably not important in the development of cancer. But there are a number of genes called proto-oncogenes that can ultimately lead to cancer if they mutate in a certain way. Most of those proto-oncogenes tell the cell when to replicate, which, as I mentioned, they do pretty frequently anyway. So the question then is, why don't these proto-oncogenes just cause cancer normally? And the answer to that is that they're regulated very carefully by your body to make sure that they're not always on. Because when they go out of control, these hyper-replicating cells create a bunch of junk cells. Cancer cells, cells that can't perform their intended purpose and ultimately get in the way of your body working. Kind of how if a whole house is hoarded, the toilet and the bathtub can't be used because they're just full of garbage. And they continue to get in the way of the body's functioning until the body can't handle it anymore and it shuts down. But, and I promise this is all related to chemotherapy. You might think I got sidetracked, but I did not. We're going back there, I promise. Because cancer is just your body's own f***ed up cells, the call is coming from inside the house.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
When you have an infection, your body tries to fight it off, right? But with cancer, your body doesn't know that the cells are bad because they look just like the real things. They are traitor cells, the Judas of the body. Your body doesn't realize that the cancer is there until it's too late and the cancer starts getting in the way of things. In other words, until it's gotten big enough to cause symptoms. And chemotherapy. The problem with chemotherapy is that its job is to kill those cancer cells. But chemotherapy ends up killing some of your own body's good cells because the cancer cells are so similar to the normal ones. Now, the way that most chemotherapy differentiates between the healthy cells and the cancer cells is that it targets rapidly dividing cells. That process of replicating DNA, where the DNA splits apart, it also makes the DNA vulnerable. Some chemotherapies damage the DNA directly, some sabotage the reproduction of DNA by inserting itself inside the DNA, and some deplete the body of the resources it needs to make DNA. And that's not all the things chemotherapy does. There are like a million different chemotherapies. I could not go through them all. But there's another problem, and that is our body has certain types of cells that are also dividing pretty quickly. And that's why people who go through chemo have such terrible side effects. The hope, though, is that the cancer will be extremely vulnerable to the chemotherapy, more so than the cells in your body, and then you can just recover once chemo is done. So circling back again to Tamisha. Tamisha went through surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, and she came out within a year on the other end, bruised but not broken, and ready to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race. Many people with stage 3 colon cancer don't even survive the cancer. Some of them are also disabled afterward. She did all of this with a colostomy. The colon is basically a long tube through which poop flows. It's plumbing. It's literally plumbing. And when a surgeon removes cancer from the colon, that requires that they remove a portion of that plumbing to get all of the cancer. At the end of the surgery, the surgeon usually sews the two ends of the plumbing back together, essentially just creating a shortened version of the colon. However, sometimes that isn't possible for a bunch of reasons that are honestly too detailed even for this video. But in that case, the surgeon creates a colostomy. What that means is that instead of going out of the butt, all poop now comes out through this hole in the tummy. So you put a bag over it, which is called a colostomy bag. And the colostomy bag catches that poop and needs to be changed several times a day. This bag of poop probably impacted every single thing that Tamisha did on the show. That to me is absolutely insane. And she also still had the energy to argue with Candy Muse and give us amazing TV. And let me just tell you, if I got into an argument with Candy Muse, I would give up immediately. She's right. I'm going to let her be right because I don't like conflict that much. Colon cancer is often completely silent and can go unnoticed for a long time, just like it did with Tamisha. She probably had colon cancer for months to years before it was detected. So when you turn 45, get your first colonoscopy. It could actually save your life. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.